My name is Carrie, and I was 6 when my father died. Mom was devastated, but she was also practical. A year later, she married David, my stepfather. He was nice enough, though sometimes distant. I was adjusting to having a new father figure when another change came along, my half-sister, Paloma. I tried to be the best big sister. God knows I tried. But from the very beginning, something was different about Paloma. The terrible twos weren't terrible, they were catastrophic. While most toddlers had tantrums, Paloma had explosions. "Mommy, she took my teddy bear again," I remember crying one day when I was 9. "Just let her have it, sweetie," Mom would say, exhaustion clear in her voice. "You know how she gets when she's upset." That became the pattern. Paloma wants, Paloma takes. Paloma screams, everyone caves. David's philosophy was simple: she needs to learn to handle her emotions on her own. But she wasn't learning, she was getting worse. I remember the day she turned 7. Mom had spent hours decorating the house with pink balloons and streamers. Everything was perfect until Paloma decided she wanted to open presents before the cake. "No, honey," Mom said gently. "We have to wait for the guests." What followed was pure chaos. Paloma didn't just cry, she transformed. She ripped down decorations, overturned the carefully set table, and when that didn't get the reaction she wanted, she grabbed scissors and started cutting up her new party dress. That was the first time I suggested they take her to a psychologist. I was 15, old enough to recognize that this wasn't normal behavior. "There's something wrong," I insisted during a quiet moment after another of Paloma's episodes. "She needs help." "She's just a child," Mom defended, but I could see the doubt creeping into her expression. "She'll grow out of it." But I knew better. Living in that house was like walking on eggshells, never knowing what might set off the next explosion. Every day brought a new drama, a new crisis, a new reason for Paloma to spiral out of control. The unpredictability was exhausting. I started spending more time in my room, creating plans for my future. College applications became my escape route, my ticket to freedom. I'd watch from my window as other families took evening walks or played in their yards, wondering what it would be like to live in a house where peace wasn't such a rare commodity. The day I left for college was the first time I felt like I could breathe freely in years. My acceptance letter to a university 3 states away felt like a get-out-of-jail-free card, and I used it without hesitation. Mom cried when we packed up the car, but I noticed she didn't try too hard to convince me to pick a closer school. "Call us when you get there," she said, hugging me tight. Behind her, Paloma stood with her arms crossed, not even bothering to say goodbye. Those first few weeks of college were like stepping into another world. No walking on eggshells, no sudden explosions of rage, no having to hide my belongings to keep them safe. My roommate, Jessica, was perfectly normal. She borrowed my clothes sometimes, but always asked first and returned them clean. It seemed almost too good to be true. "Your family sounds intense," Jessica said one night after I'd gotten off the phone with Mom. Even through the phone, I could hear Paloma screaming about something in the background. "That's putting it mildly," I replied, grateful for the hundreds of miles between us. I started dating, something I'd never really done in high school. It had been too risky bringing boys home, never knowing when Paloma might have one of her episodes. There was Mike from my economics class, then Stephen from the campus coffee shop. Normal relationships with normal problems, nothing like the chaos I'd grown up with. Then, in my sophomore year, I got the call about Grandpa. He was my dad's father, and probably the most stable presence in my early childhood. After Dad died, he'd been the one to take me fishing, to school events, to just get ice cream and talk. The news hit me hard. "He left you the house," Mom told me over the phone. "And some savings too. He wanted you to have something solid to start your life with." It was a generous gift. The house was in my hometown, the place I'd tried so hard to escape. Still, I was practical enough to see the opportunity. I hired a property manager and rented it out, using the income to help with college expenses. After graduation, I faced a choice: stay away and keep renting the house, or return home and claim my inheritance properly. The decision was made easier by a job offer from a local company, good salary, excellent benefits, and a chance to live rent-free in my own home. Meanwhile, Paloma had skipped college entirely. My parents had finally gotten her to see a psychologist, though it had taken 17 years and countless destroyed belongings to get to that point. The medications are helping, Mom told me hopefully during one of our calls. When she takes them, she's almost like a different person. The when she takes them part was the catch. Paloma viewed her meds the way most people view optional vitamins: nice to have, but not essential. She'd skip doses, sometimes for days at a time, and the old Paloma would come roaring back. I remember visiting home one weekend and finding Mom cleaning up broken glass in the kitchen. "What happened?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "She forgot her meds for 3 days," Mom sighed, looking older than her years. "Something about her favorite show being cancelled. I don't even know anymore." The doctors had been clear: Paloma needed to stay on her medication consistently. But you can't force an adult to take their pills, and Paloma was technically an adult now, even if she didn't always act like one. I'll never forget the day Paloma announced she was getting married. I was having Sunday coffee with Mom when she burst into the kitchen, waving her left hand with a ring on it. Marcus was steady, calm, and genuinely kind, everything my sister wasn't. I couldn't help but wonder what he saw in Paloma, but love works in mysterious ways, I guess. The wedding was small and quick, and before anyone could catch their breath, Paloma was pregnant. "We're staying here until we save up enough for our own place," she announced to our parents, as if it was already decided. Mom and David exchanged glances, but said nothing. I started dreading my visits home. The house I grew up in had transformed into something between a daycare center and a disaster zone. Baby toys littered every surface, laundry piled up in corners, and dishes filled the sink. The baby's crying merged with Paloma's frequent outbursts to create a constant soundtrack of chaos. During one visit, I found Mom in the kitchen, staring blankly at a pile of unwashed bottles. "I'm so tired, Carrie," she whispered, not even turning to look at me. "I love them, but I'm just so tired." David wasn't faring much better. His hair had gone completely gray, and the lines around his eyes had deepened. One evening, I overheard him trying to reason with Paloma. "You've been here for over a year now," he said, keeping his voice low to avoid another explosion. "Don't you think it's time to look for your own place?" "With what money?" Paloma snapped back. "Do you know how expensive rent is? Do you want your grandchild living on the street?" "We could help you with the first few months," Mom offered gently. "Just to get you started." "Oh, so you want to get rid of us that badly?" Paloma's voice started rising, that familiar edge creeping in. "Fine, we'll move out when I get a job. When the baby's older. When we can afford it. Happy now?" I learned to read the signs, to feel the tension building in the air, like static before a storm. When Paloma's voice would start getting that shrill edge, or when the baby's cries would push her closer to her breaking point, I'd quietly gather my things and make my escape. One particularly bad day, I was packing up my purse as Paloma raged through the house, screaming about how ungrateful everyone was, how no one understood how hard it was being a mother, how unfair it was that she couldn't afford her own place. "I don't know how much more of this we can take," David muttered, helping me to the door. "Have you talked to her doctor?" I asked. "About adjusting her medication?" "She says she doesn't need it anymore," Mom said, appearing behind him. "Says being a mother cured her." I hugged them both goodbye, feeling the tension in their shoulders, seeing the exhaustion etched into their faces. As I drove away, I could still hear Paloma's voice echoing through the neighborhood, and I wondered how long this situation could possibly continue before something had to give. I should have known something was off that Christmas. The tension in the house was different, heavier somehow. I arrived with arms full of carefully wrapped presents, trying to maintain the holiday spirit despite Paloma's immediate scowl when I walked in. Mom had outdone herself with the decorations, the tree sparkled in the corner, and the smell of sugar cookies filled the air. Even the baby seemed to be in a good mood, playing quietly with some wrapping paper on the floor. We did presents after dinner. I'd spent weeks picking out something for everyone: a silk scarf for Mom, a leather wallet for David, a cute outfit for the baby, and for Paloma, a designer purse I'd spotted on sale. "Is this it?" Paloma said, turning the bag over in her hands. Her voice had that dangerous edge I knew too well. "I mean, you have a good job. You could have gotten something more expensive." "Paloma," Marcus warned quietly, but she ignored him. "It's a nice bag," Mom tried to intervene. "Look at the detail." "Whatever," Paloma cut her off, tossing the purse aside. I exchanged glances with David, who shrugged helplessly. We'd all gotten used to navigating Paloma's moods, and this seemed like a typical holiday sulk. She spent the next hour prowling around the house like a storm cloud, barely speaking to anyone. Later, as I was helping Mom clean up the wrapping paper, Paloma suddenly appeared in the doorway. Something about her posture made me pause. "I have an announcement," she declared, her voice unnaturally calm. "I've decided to move out." The relief in the room was palpable. Mom's face lit up, David straightened in his chair, and I felt myself breaking into a smile. Finally, I thought. Finally, they'll get their house back. "That's wonderful, honey," Mom started to say, but Paloma wasn't finished. "Carrie's going to give me her house." The silence that followed was deafening. I stared at my sister, certain I'd misheard. Marcus, who'd been bouncing the baby on his knee, froze mid-bounce. What?" I managed to say. "You heard me." Paloma's voice took on that familiar, razor-sharp edge. "Look at you, 31, single, no kids. Face it, Carrie, you're an old maid. You don't need a whole house. I have a family, a baby. We need the space more than you do." "Paloma, that's enough," David started, but she was on a roll now. "It's not fair," she shrieked, her calm facade cracking. "She gets everything. A house from Grandpa, a good job, and what do I get? Nothing." "That house was my grandfather's gift to me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm not giving it to you." The explosion that followed was spectacular even by Paloma's standards. She started screaming, tears streaming down her face as she grabbed the nearest gifts and hurled them at me. One caught me in the shoulder, another smashed against the wall. "You selfish bitch," she screamed. "You've always been selfish. You don't deserve that house." I didn't wait to see what else Paloma might throw. Grabbing my coat and purse, I ran for the door, my sister's screams following me into the cold December night. I thought the Christmas incident would be the end of it. I was wrong. 3 days after Christmas, I woke up to shouting outside my bedroom window. "Give me the house, you don't deserve it." Paloma's voice cut through the quiet morning air. She was standing on my front lawn, her baby propped on her hip, screaming up at my window. Mrs. Peterson, my elderly neighbor, came out to see what the commotion was about. "Is everything all right, dear?" she called to me as I peered out. "Go back inside, you nosy old hag," Paloma screamed at her. "This is family business." I immediately called Mom. "You need to come get her," I pleaded. "She's disturbing the whole neighborhood." "We're on our way," Mom promised. But this was just the beginning. The next day, Paloma was back, this time with a tent. "I'm not leaving until you give me what's rightfully mine," she shouted, setting up camp on my front lawn. The baby crawled around in the dry grass and snow while she hammered tent stakes into my yard. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from her. "You're so selfish. Just give me the house. I'll make your life hell until you sign it over. Nobody wants an old maid for a neighbor anyway." I called Mom and David again and again. Their responses became increasingly helpless. "We tried to bring her home," Mom said, sounding defeated. "She just comes right back." "She's not taking her medication," David added. "We can't control her." After a week of this, my neighbors started calling the police, but Paloma would leave before they arrived, only to return hours later. The baby's cries mixed with her screams, creating a soundtrack of chaos that followed me everywhere. Finally, I called a lawyer. "This is straightforward harassment," Rachel, my attorney, said after reviewing the situation. "We need to document everything and file for a restraining order." I became methodical about it. I saved every text, every voicemail. My security cameras captured her daily performances, the screaming, the tent, the times she threw rocks at my windows. I documented the police calls, the neighbor complaints, everything. The court date came faster than I expected. I sat trembling in the courtroom as the judge reviewed the evidence, hundreds of threatening messages, hours of security footage, testimony from my neighbors. Paloma didn't help her case by trying to scream over the proceedings. "Order in the court," the judge had to say multiple times. When he issued his ruling, a restraining order preventing Paloma from coming within 150 meters of me or my property, I felt my body sag with relief. The bailiff had to escort her out as she screamed about family betrayal and injustice. I went to bed that night hoping this would be the end of it, but somehow knowing it wouldn't be. When you've grown up with someone like Paloma, you learn that peace is often just the eye of the storm. The restraining order should have been the end of it. Instead, it just made Paloma more creative. The first call came from a number I didn't recognize. "You can't hide from family," Paloma's voice crackled through the speaker before I could hang up. Then came the texts, dozens of them, each from a different number. "You think you can keep me away? The house will be mine. You can't hide forever." I changed my number, but somehow she always found the new one. It was like trying to plug holes in a sinking ship. As soon as I blocked one number, she'd find another. "Mom," I said during one of our calls, my voice shaking, "this has to stop. She needs serious help." The silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes before Mom finally responded. "I know she does, honey, but what can I do? I can barely get her to talk to me anymore. She's so focused on this house situation." "There are specialized clinics," I suggested, trying to keep my voice steady. "Places that could help her, give her the treatment she needs." "A mental hospital?" Mom's voice cracked. "Carrie, I can't do that to her. She's my baby. You're asking me to lock up my own daughter. She's not going to get better without help," I insisted. "She's getting worse." I can't," Mom whispered. "Please don't ask me to do that." Running out of options, I called Marcus. Maybe Paloma's husband could talk some sense into her. "Marcus, please," I begged. "Can't you do something? She's your wife." He let out a heavy sigh. "Honestly, Carrie? I don't even recognize her anymore. This obsession with your house, it's like it's taken over her entire personality. I try to talk to her about moving somewhere else, anywhere else, but she won't hear it." "What do you mean?" "I found some nice apartments we could afford. I've even suggested moving to a different town for a fresh start. But she's fixated on your house. Nothing else will do. She's convinced herself it has to be your house or nothing." His voice dropped lower. "Between you and me, I don't even want the house. I just want to get away from all this chaos, give my kid a normal life. But Paloma, she stays up all night, plotting ways to get around the restraining order. She stopped taking her meds completely. Says she needs to stay sharp to win this battle. I don't know what to do anymore." The defeat in his voice scared me more than Paloma's threats. If her own husband had given up trying to reason with her, what hope was there? "I'm sorry," Marcus added quietly. "I never wanted any of this. I just wanted a normal life with my wife and child. I don't know how everything got so twisted." After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen, my grandfather's kitchen, and tried to make sense of it all. The house around me felt different now, tainted by Paloma's obsession. Every ring of the phone, every notification sound made me jump. I'd achieved the American dream, a house of my own, a good job, independence, and somehow it had turned into a nightmare. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon when everything finally exploded. I was working from home when I heard the screaming, a sound I'd grown far too familiar with, but this time different. More feral, more dangerous. You traitor! Both of you betraying me. I looked out my window and felt my blood run cold. Paloma was standing on my lawn, clutching a red gas can, her face contorted with rage. She was swaying slightly, like she could barely keep herself upright. I saw the call log, she screamed, sloshing gasoline onto my garden. Plotting with my husband behind my back. I always knew you wanted to steal him too. My hand shook as I dialed 911. Please hurry, I whispered into the phone. She has gasoline. You think you're so perfect, Paloma's voice cracked as she stumbled closer to the house. Always the good daughter, always doing everything right. I'll show you what happens to traitors. I could hear sirens in the distance, but they seemed too far away. Paloma was fumbling in her pockets now, and I didn't want to think about what she might be looking for. The police arrived just as she was trying to light a match. It took 3 officers to restrain her, her screams echoing through the neighborhood as they led her away. The gas can lay overturned on my wilting flowers. What followed was a blur of police statements, court appearances, and psychiatric evaluations. The doctors were clear, Paloma was a danger to herself and others. She needed intensive psychiatric care. This time, not even Mom could argue. We're filing for divorce, Marcus told me a few days later, his voice heavy. The court awarded me full custody of Emma. They say Paloma will be in treatment for at least 6 months, maybe longer. I sat with Mom and David in their kitchen the next week, all of us looking older than we had any right to. I can't stay here, I said finally. Even after she gets out of the hospital. I just can't. Mom reached for my hand across the table. We understand, honey. I'll sell the house, I continued. Move to another state. Start fresh somewhere she can't find me. But we'll never see you, Mom's voice cracked. You can visit me, I assured her. We'll talk all the time. But I need to be somewhere safe. Somewhere far away from all this. David nodded slowly. We should have gotten her help years ago. Real help. Not just medications she could choose not to take. The realtor sold my house in record time. Apparently, my security system and well-kept gardens were major selling points. I didn't tell her about the gasoline stains. Marcus moved in with his parents, taking little Emma with him. I'm done, he told the family. Even if she gets better, some things you can't come back from. As I packed up my grandfather's house, each box felt like I was packing away a piece of my history, my connection to my father, my dreams of building a life here. But with each box, I also felt lighter, more free. It's amazing how much your life can change in a year. My new apartment is smaller than my old house, but it feels bigger somehow, maybe because it's not weighed down by family history and drama. The windows face east, and every morning I watch the sunrise while having my coffee, something I never had time to appreciate before. You seem different here, Mom said during her last visit. More relaxed. She was right. I am different here. I've started dating someone, Michael, a software engineer I met at a local coffee shop. He's kind and steady, the type of person who makes plans for the future and actually follows through with them. Last week, he asked me to move in with him. Tell me about your family, he'd asked on our 3rd date. I'd hesitated, then told him everything. About Paloma, the house, the gasoline. He'd listened without judgment, then simply said, that must have been really hard for you. It was the first time someone had acknowledged that, without trying to make excuses for Paloma. Mom calls every Sunday, like clockwork. She tells me about her garden, about David's retirement plans, and sometimes, carefully, about Paloma. I visited her yesterday, she said during our last call. She's different in the clinic, calmer. They have her on new medications, and she's actually taking them this time. She doesn't ask about you or the house. It's like that whole episode never happened. I could hear the hope in her voice, the unspoken question about reconciliation. But I've learned the hard way that hope can be dangerous when it comes to Paloma. Mom, I said gently, I'm glad she's doing better. Really, I am. But I can't risk it. Not now, maybe not ever. I understand, she sighed. I just miss having both my daughters together. I know. But she's missed doses before. Or decided she didn't need her medication anymore. I can't go through that again. I won't. The truth is, I do think about Paloma sometimes. I wonder if she really has changed, if the treatment is finally working. Part of me hopes that somewhere down the line, maybe years from now, we might be able to have some kind of relationship again. A careful one, with strong boundaries and professional support. But that's a maybe for the distant future. For now, I'm focused on building my new life, one that's free from chaos and drama. I'm learning that it's okay to prioritize my own peace of mind, that loving someone doesn't mean you have to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. Michael and I are planning a vacation next month. Mom and David are coming to visit for Thanksgiving. My job is going well, and I'm making friends in my new city. Life is quiet, predictable, and sometimes even a little boring. And I've never been happier.